Every day, fentanyl claims approximately 20 Canadian lives, flooding our streets through cartels and porous borders, while our government throws billions at buzzword-filled plans that so far have delivered little apart from meetings and empty promises. Their so-called safer supply strategy has backfired spectacularly, with potent opioids being diverted straight to our kids as healthcare workers burn out from endless calls, and now globalist groups like the United Nations are pushing that denying addicts more drugs somehow violates their rights. So what kind of bizarro world are we living in? Let's dig in.
Mr. President, on fentanyl, Mr. President, less than 1% of all fentanyl that comes into the U.S. is apprehended at the Canadian border. So why use fentanyl as a reason?
Because they should be apprehending much more. They're only apprehending 1%. You're right about that. It's a little more than that. But they should be apprehending much more because a lot comes through Canada. And as Mexico gets stronger in terms of the border, it goes up to Canada. And a lot of drugs are coming in through Canada. We can't have that.
In February, then quasi-resigned Prime Minister Justin Trudeau appointed Kevin Brosseau as Canada's fentanyl czar, a fancy title with big promises. His job was to lead a Team Canada approach to work closely with U.S. counterparts to detect, disrupt, and dismantle fentanyl trafficking networks, leveraging his expertise in drug trafficking, organized crime, and national security. With the fentanyl crisis killing roughly 20 Canadians every single day, the urgency couldn't be clearer, especially as Trump's tariff actions stem directly from what the White House calls and declared a national emergency over the public health crisis caused by fentanyl and illicit drugs flowing across the northern border into the United States.
Both of them. Canada, very much so. They've allowed millions and millions of people to come into our country that shouldn't be here. They could have stopped them, and they didn't. And they've killed 300,000 people last year, my opinion, have been destroyed by drugs, by fentanyl.
So it's been 4 months since the Liberals appointed this czar with a $1.3 billion budget pouring into an expanded plan to strengthen border security. But hold your applause, because Brosseau's interim report from June reads like a laundry list of meetings, buzzwords, and recycled ideas, with precious little to actually show for it. The report shows that the crisis is exponentially worse in British Columbia and Ontario, and brags about hearing from everyone: healthcare workers, cops, financial institutions, and even port authorities. They all say the same thing. Fentanyl is a monster. It's 100 times more potent than morphine, mixed with other drugs and hidden in fake pills. Since 2016, over 52,000 Canadians have died from opioid overdoses. 72% of them involve fentanyl in 2024 alone. The crisis is global, with precursors from Asia funneled through Mexico and into Canada by cartels.
So what we did when I got to the bureau is we stood up this massive enterprise to go after fentanyl precursor companies in mainland China. And they're probably not going to like that. And what they're doing now to get cute is they're shipping that stuff not straight to here. They're going to places like India, and I'm also doing operations in India. And they're having the Mexican cartels now make this fentanyl down in Mexico still. But, instead of going right up the southern border and into America, you know what they're doing? They're flying it into Vancouver. They're taking the precursors up to Canada, manufacturing it up there, and doing their global distribution routes from up there because we were being so effective down south.
Organized crime is laughing all the way to the bank, laundering profits to keep the cycle going. And what's Canada doing? Well, they're doing a lot of talking. The report pats itself on the back for the Strong Borders Act. That's the controversial and potentially charter-infringing Bill C-2, tabled the same month that this report came out. Bill C-2 promises new tools for law enforcement, better border security, and a crackdown on money laundering, but it also sneaks in a bunch of provisions for snooping and has serious privacy implications for the average Canadian, infringing on what a reasonable person would expect to have in terms of privacy. Now, the June report says that the $1.3 billion for a border plan will be complete with Black Hawk helicopters, drones, and a shiny new intelligence sharing cell. They're even setting up drug analysis centers through Health Canada. by 2026 to help sniff out fentanyl's origins and the precursor chemicals being smuggled in. Sounds impressive until you realize that it's mostly filled with future promises. So where's the action now? Well, they've also tucked in a high-risk child sex offender database into this plan, and I guess that does somehow relate to fentanyl and organized crime, but it seems more like another way to say, look, it's been 4 months and we finally have a plan, instead of taking concrete action. Brosseau told the Canadian state broadcaster that more busts at the border prove they're doing something. And it apparently comes from more of that intelligence sharing with the US. But he tries to deflect the blame onto Mexico for fentanyl trafficking. And Carney's taking that talking point. Listen for yourself.
Cares deeply about cross-border flow of fentanyl, ending the scourge of fentanyl. So do we. We are in the process of cracking down on fentanyl. We got 1,000 more RCMP personnel coming on board. We have 1,000 more border agents. We've got better surveillance technology. We're cracking down on transnational gangs. We're doing all those things first and foremost for Canada, but actually it helps solve the issues with the United States, issues which, to be absolutely transparent, Canada is a rounding error for relative to other sources of fentanyl into that country. But that's an example where we will continue to do things in a win-win way.
Now, this is a far cry from Carney's stance just a few months ago when he said that this wasn't actually a crisis.
Fentanyl is an absolute crisis in the United States. It's a challenge here, but it's a crisis there.
So while the report admits the obvious, there's no silver bullet, but we need to choke the supply chain, precursors, trafficking routes, money laundering, while tackling demand through treatment and awareness campaigns. But here's the thing, for nearly a decade, the Liberals have been prioritizing their $1 billion safer supply drug strategy that has only increased death, despair, and destruction. Now that the tides are turning, funding is running out, and it's not set to be renewed. It seems too little, too late. After all, it's well documented that this government-approved, supposedly safer supply of synthetic opioids is being diverted into the hands of our children. Not only is the Ottawa Hospital looking to contract out surveillance of this diversion, admitting that their safer supply program is leaking highly addictive opioids onto the streets, but emergency room physicians are sounding the alarm on a concerning trend after a high school student nearly died from overdosing on these so-called safer drugs. After being brought in by ambulance and resuscitated in the ER, the teen stated that he purchased a bottle of dilaudid 8 milligram tablets. It's a high-dose opioid painkiller that goes by the name of Dillies on the streets. The emergency room physician says that this drug is typically prescribed in 1 to 2 milligram doses for severe pain, such as cancer or major injuries. These 8 milligram tablets are unusually potent and pose a severe risk of fatal overdose with just one pill. Healthcare providers are burned out, while emergency services are stretched thin, handling repeat overdose calls often from the same individuals cycling through crisis after crisis. Adding to the absurdity are radical globalist activist groups and international bodies like the United Nations claiming that withholding these drugs from people with addiction violates their human rights, treating addiction as a form of disability under international conventions. What kind of upside-down inversion of reality are we even living in? While Brosseau's report gives a nod to Alberta's recovery model, the report is vague on how to scale it. Sure, we have a trilateral fentanyl committee and an overdose action plan, but it feels like diplomatic posturing while Canadians keep dying. And the RCMP, well, they're stuck in the ditch. So here's the bottom line. This report is a parade of good intentions, but it's light on results. More meetings, more plans, more conversations, and more investments to come. Brosseau's out there having tours, but where's the urgency? Fentanyl isn't waiting until 2026, and neither should we. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. We've been reporting on the crime, the chaos, the disorder plaguing Canadian cities, streets, and towns all across the nation for years. If you'd like to check out those reports and consider supporting this journalism, then please head over to fixourcities.com. That's fixourcities.com.